Hey everybody, welcome to the fourth seminar in our light tackle marathon. We're going to be having our big light tackle sales event on the 11th of April. We're also going to be having a combo for kids party out in the parking lot. So we'll have EJ grilling up, we'll have kids games and prizes. We're also going to have a rod and reel trade-in that's going to benefit kids. So with that being said, let's dive right into our seminar here. Today with me, I have owner of High Octane Custom Baits, Eddie Weber, and we're going to talk about all things Snakehead today. So thanks for coming, Eddie. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about High Octane, a little bit about yourself, and a little bit about Snakehead fishing?
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Eddie Weber, owner of High Octane. High Octane started with my buddy back in 2020, and we have just been building really high quality baits for Snakehead. More weedless stuff, really strong components. So we'll go through a bunch of stuff here, but everything has like extra strong hooks, extra strong components like clips, split rings, because as we know, Snakehead, once you get one on, the fight just starts there. Even in the kayak, they love to rip apart frogs and lures and stuff like that. So we crank everything up with the strength. So you're not going through one lure per fish.
Yeah, and that's definitely really important, is that durability aspect.
100%.
So let's dive into a little bit of fishing here. So you've got a whole bunch of different lures that you make. Let's maybe talk about some of the stuff you've got here and what's going to work well in the approaching season, that being early to mid to middle spring.
Yeah, talk about kind of how I approach spring, especially my first couple trips. Like if I had three lures tied on with rods, kind of where would I start, right? So I'd have one Topwater on. I like going with a little larger profile in the springtime. I think they're a little more aggressive in the springtime, willing to eat a little bigger baits. But then if that doesn't work, you can scale down to some other things we'll show you. So this is our Frogzilla here, also in anglers as well. So great topwater bait. Soft body, extremely strong hooks. You can throw that anywhere. And then for subsurface, I like to start with the weedless Trident here, which is a inline spinner style bait. Going to flow through the water just like that. And then a weedless chatters. So I steer a little bit more to the weedless chatter side, but a lot of guys like the weedless Trident. It's a little bit more of a preference. Sometimes the fish like a little more subtle spin than a hard-hitting chatterbait. So those are my suggestions there. I like to really start with white. You should see here a lot of more natural colors with the white, and then go to a bright, kind of very vibrant, catch your attention kind of color.
For sure. So you said you kind of like to start with the white. What's sort of an indicator to you which would tell you maybe, okay, I'm going to go to an electric chicken, or I'm going to go to an orange or something like that?
Yeah, really, like if I'm not seeing any fish move to the bait, or getting any strikes within really like the first hour or so, I'll switch at least one of them up to a brighter color. It's crazy sometimes. I'll have a white on, be throwing that for an hour, and then maybe it's a coincidence, but I'll put the orange on and get a hit within the first 5 minutes. So you just don't know. You just get that feel though.
For sure. It's sort of I guess you would say like a trial and error thing. There's not really one condition that might dictate one color versus another. Yeah,
or like why I switch, I guess, is it's a little bit more feeling. The less bites you get, the more we want to change it up. For sure.
Right. You kind of go with your gut.
Yeah.
Cool. And so you talk about, you have some subsurface lures on, you got some topwaters tied on. In the spring specifically, what is sort of an indication to you that they might be hitting topwater and it might be time to pick up that frog?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll definitely hear them kind of popping. Snakehead have a very distinct pop. They actually suck in the lure instead of really like charging after it like a rockfish would. So that's an indicator that they're feeding, especially on topwater. So that's one reason. I'm always throwing a frog too, no matter what. I love that topwater bite. So yeah. I'll even just switch it up between maybe a couple casts with the subsurface and then a few casts with the topwater too. Especially if they're tucked way back up in stuff, a topwater is a little bit fling in there.
For sure, for sure. And you mentioned in the spring that you like to go with sort of like a fatter bodied topwater. I guess as we transition closer to summer and the fish might get a little bit more finicky, they're not feeding as hard. What would you switch to? I see you got some of these slimmer ducks here, definitely like a walking style bait, some blades, some skirted.
Yep.
Why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about when you would throw these here?
100%. Yeah, so I'm going to start with the Frogzilla because I like a little bigger profile, but if they don't seem to be hitting that, or if they're kind of short striking, they're not really committing fully to that, I'll switch to the duck we have. And it's nice because it's not much, but it's a slimmer profile, so they can really down it easier, if you will, and really a great hookup ratio. You can really walk this in place. I mean, you can just twitch it right in front of their face to get the strikes. Or, if sometimes they want something that's a little more flashy, a little more noise, and that's when I go to the bladed duck to really attract them in. Is a great option for the spring too, with the pads just coming up and they kind of have the stalks just out of the water. You can throw it as far as you can and just let it bounce off those stalks and see if you get anything to chase it. So, and then that's a great way to, if you see a fish chasing it and it doesn't commit, have both of these tied on and follow with your more walking bait to throw in there and kind of twitch back and forth, get them the strike. For sure,
for sure. Now, I want to talk a little bit, moving off of the lures, just sort of about breaking down a body of water. So what do you look for when you're out there? I think you mostly do kayak, right?
Yep.
So when you're out there in your kayak, and I don't know, let's just take maybe Blackwater as an example. So when you're out in your kayak in Blackwater, what sort of structure are you looking for? What type of water conditions are you looking for? And what would you throw based on the things that you find?
Yep, absolutely. So I love when, especially in Blackwater, when the pads aren't up yet and they're just barely coming up out of the water, and you can throw any of these subsurface to a frog kind of right through there, and they're hanging out, hiding in that, raising pads, and they'll come after it that way. Anytime you can find grass, that is where they're going to be also. So even if it's in Blackwater and there's a little bit of grass up against the shore where the pads are starting, that's where I really target as well. Or, if there's, let's just imagine this is the shoreline and the pads start here, targeting this between the shore and where the pads start is where they seem to be hanging out, especially on those warm afternoons.
For sure. And what about your rod and reel setup? Do you sort of have one rod and reel setup that you use for all your different types of baits here, or maybe you have a different rod and reel you would use for your topwater versus like the chatterbait or spinnerbait?
Yeah, I'll break down a couple different options. So I do at least a medium heavy on my subsurface stuff, if not a heavy, and then definitely heavy for the topwater stuff. Because you really want to be able to set the hook hard and get them out of wherever they are quickly.
Right.
As soon as they dig in, it's really tough to get them out of some of that stuff. So heavy rod for topwater for sure. At least 30-pound braid. I go more to 50-pound a lot of times. And again, it's not because you need that to get them out maybe, but you're throwing constantly into sticks and branches and pads, and that stuff's sharp. So
right.
After a while, that's breaking down your line. So you want to make sure that once you get the hit, it's not going to be frayed.
100%. And what about leader? Do you use a leader? Do you maybe use it only on the subsurface versus topwater? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I do straight braid. I like being able to feel the hit as soon as it happens, and then know that once you set the hook, it's going to be responsive immediately.
For sure.
So with a leader, you have a little bit of a stretch, so it's a little bit of a delayed hook set actually, and they're not leader shy. I mean, I'll run orange line or pink line, and it works just fine.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then what about your reel? Are you typically throwing bait casters so you get that really sort of precise accuracy, or can you get away with using a spinning reel? What do you like to use?
I am almost 100% spinning reel guy. Even Topwater, I get a lot of flack for using Topwater frogs with a spinning reel, but 3000s, you can kind of do a 4000 if you want, but I like 3000 spinning reels, something light, because you're casting all day long.
Right.
Like a light but really durable, like a Stratic. I'll use a Stratic a lot, because you just don't want to get worn down. You're constantly casting and casting and casting.
Right.
So you want to, the heavier the reel, you don't realize after a while how much that really can wear on you.
100%. And I think that's something that a lot of people experience in a whole bunch of different facets of fishing, where you're casting all day, you're jigging all day and stuff like that. So it's definitely a really good tip. Last thing here, where can people find you? Where can they find High Octane baits? Why don't you
Absolutely.
tell the people?
So a lot of these baits are here in Anglers. We're really honored to be part of Anglers for a while now. Thanks for having me on the video again.
Indeed.
And online, highoctanecb.com, at High Octane Custom Baits on Instagram, Facebook as well. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time today, Eddie. I'm sure the people appreciate hearing all about Snakehead. And we look forward to our event on April 11th.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Yeah.